Hello and welcome to Occupied Thoughts, a podcast brought to you by the Foundation for Middle East Peace. I'm Sarah Anne Minkin, Director of Programs and Partnerships for the Foundation. Today is July 3rd, 2022, and I am truly delighted to be here with Ali Awad. Ali is a writer and activist from the village of Tuba in Masafer Yatta, which is in the South Hebron Hills in the West Bank. He is co-founder of the new media project, Humans of Masafer Yatta, which is on Instagram and Substack, and which I strongly recommend following. He's also an activist with the campaign Save Masafer Yatta, among other organizations. Ali is going to talk to us today about what's going on right now in Masafer Yatta, and particularly in firing zone 918. FMEP has been following the developments in Masafer Yatta and the firing zone for a while. We've hosted Ali before, and we're so grateful that he made time for us again. The last time we published a public conversation with Ali was in March, a few weeks before the Israeli Supreme Court rendered their final decision on firing zone 918. For background, for those who are just tuning into this story, firing zone 918 is an area in Masafer Yatta that the Israeli military designated to itself in the 1980s for its own training. It's about 30,000 dunams of land and home to more than 1,000 people who live in small herding villages. After 20 years of legal struggle, the Israeli Supreme Court in May authorized the Israeli military to expel the Palestinian residents of the firing zone and to demolish their homes and their communities. Actions that the UN and other human rights experts have labeled as war crimes. And that Ali himself, as well as many other Palestinians and other activists, have called ethnic cleansing. These expulsions and demolitions have already begun. And the IDF most recently has also begun a new round of training in the firing zone. So the military presence there is very high. You can read more on our website, the FMEP website, and also on 972, among other outlets. Ali's newest article on 972 is called "They're Not Arriving with Trucks to Deport Us, but the Goal is the Same." Ali, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Sarah Ann, for hosting me and organizing this important conversation.
I'm so grateful you made the time. So I want to start. In your newest article, you said that in the weeks since the court decision in May, so for the last 8 weeks, this is what you wrote: people's lives here have become much harder. The army is hoping that by persecuting us enough, they will make it impossible for us to remain. So will you please tell us what's been happening since May?
Yeah. So actually, what I mean that they are not coming to deport us with the trucks, but the goal is the same. In my latest article, it is comparing it with what happened to the same villages to me myself when I was 1 year old in 1999. In that year, the military trucks, they have looted our properties and destroyed our homes in the villages of Masafer Yatta and pushed us out entirely from the Masafer Yatta area. But what is happening and what's making me more scary is that
We lost you for one moment, Ali. I know that the internet is very spotty in Masafer Yatta, but you're back, and you were just in the midst of talking to us about how scary this moment is in particular, and how it's different from your experience. You were 1 year old in 1999 when your family was first expelled, but from your understanding of what happened in 1999 with the expulsions and now. So please continue. Tell us about now.
Yeah, so actually after May 4th, yeah, so actually after May 4th, when the Israeli High Court gave the Israeli army the green light to do whatever they want in the villages of Masafer Yatta, they actually told them this is the area it's ruled for you for your fire ammunition and the fire training. You can evacuate the thousands of residents of those villages, or you actually can train when they are there. So the military is actually like making the goal of evacuating the residents different than 1999 by not making any attention that they are really evacuating the residents. So first of all, they started with what I called like the policies of a slow eviction of the residents. When immediately after the High Court, they started to cut off the residents from anybody coming to the villages. So they set like, first of all, the flying checkpoint at the entrance of the villages, and they prevent like the doctors, the teachers, and the journalists, and the solidarity groups that they come to work in these villages, they prevent them from entering to the villages. Then they start like to get inside the doors. And
I'm going to interrupt you. Sorry for 1 second. You're describing flying checkpoints. So just in case anyone who's listening doesn't know what that is, it's not a permanent checkpoint. It's a temporary checkpoint. That's why it's called flying, which they can put up wherever they want, whenever they want. Okay, so the flying checkpoints, and they're preventing people who don't live in the villages from coming in. Thank you.
yeah,
Okay.
and in order like to make the residents, like the thousands of the residents that they are in these villages, cut off from any other people, they start to photograph like their IDs, invade their homes and take the IDs of everyone. So that means that anybody, even like Palestinians, who doesn't live in those villages will be under arrest if he go inside these villages. So that
We lost Ali again for a moment, but he's describing to us that they
in the
did a,
village.
oh, we lost you. We lost you for a second. Ali, you're coming in and out. You were just talking about the census, that they're taking photographs of everybody's IDs. And so they know who's in what house, how many people live there. Right. And so they know who they think belongs in that place and who doesn't belong in that place, the census.
Yeah, exactly. So that like they photographed like the IDs, the identifications of the residents in order to prevent any other people from coming or visiting the village, those residents. So that means like if I live here, for example, in Tuba, and my brother live in another place in the West Bank, and he come to visit me here, and his ID was not photographed, that means he is like under arrest of visiting me. So that means one day that I will be cut off from my other family out of Masafer Yatta, and at the end of the day, I would be evacuated by myself. The other thing that they did, even like, for example, if I am from Tuba, I was detained in the village of El Merkez. I am as an activist who moved to document like the lives of the other people. I was detained in the village of El Merkez, which is a few kilometers located in the same area as my village. I was visiting my friend over there when I was leaving the soldiers at the flying checkpoint, the temporary ones. They took my ID and they told me, you are not allowed to be here entirely. It's an area that the High Court green light to the army to have it. So the other thing that they do, which is the confiscations of the vehicles. That's clearly like that they want like to restrict like the movements of the people. In my article, I mentioned a resident of the village of Taban, who the army invaded his village, and they confiscated his, they arrested him and they confiscated his vehicle. After the investigation, he was promised like to take his vehicle back home, but he went back home, and for more than 20 days, he was dealing to get his vehicle back after paying a high fine of 2,200 shekels. He told me that they entered in my house and they detained me from my own home in the village of Taban, one of the villages in Masafer Yatta. So the army, the commander know himself that I live here and I am a resident, but it is just a policy to make my life harder and to make me not able to drive back to my village by confiscating my vehicle. Himself, like the other things that the military is doing in the villages, that even like in the last years, the demolition used like to happen and is still happening in those villages. But like the number of the demolition and the crimes that they are doing and committing against the people shelters, it's unbelievable. Like for example, two families, like my friends from the village of Al Fakhid and the village of Al Mirkis, those like another two villages located in Masafer Yatta, they have like faced 3 times of demolition after May entirely for their entire shelters and the shelter of their livestock. So for example, one family in Al Fakhid, he's a parent, like he's a father who has like little children. He has, I think, five daughters. They are in the ages between 2 years and 10 years. They were like the bulldozer shot 2 times after May 4th to their villages and like left them without any shelter. And the distribution of the demolition orders against the villages. For example, there is the village of Taban, another village that is called Sfai. The military.
We lost you again. Your voice cut out. I can see you. You're still here with us. Ali, I'm so glad you're back. The internet again is not the internet is serving us and also being a little difficult tonight. So you were telling us about your friends and about having their homes demolished twice, fully demolished, all of the structures for the family and also for their animals since May 4th.
Yeah, so I'm talking like after like the May 4th and the court hearing, the military like demolition against like the structures and the homes of the people, that they don't hesitate like to show up to one of those villages and destroy like the entire homes and shelters for the children and for the families there. As I mentioned, like my friend from the village of Al Fakhid, who has like daughters and little children. When they are like 2 and 3 and like 5 years old, the army bulldozers show up at their village and entirely destroyed everything that they have. Like they leave like their village without leaving any shelter for them to sleep. So that is actually a displacing and evacuating them, not necessarily to put them in a military truck and take them away from their village, but leaving them without any shelter. That exactly means that telling them that you have to leave from here. The other thing, which is actually like soon, we are afraid that they will start like to not again putting the people on military trucks, but destroy the whole entire village, because they distributed in different villages, like the village of Taban, as the village of the guy Nasser Abu Ubaid, who they confiscated his car that I mentioned earlier in the conversation. They have showed up to his village and distributed like dozens of demolition orders against every structures, even the water wells, the holes that his family and his neighbors, they have dig and built since the year 2000. They are more than 20 years old. Now they, after the May 4th, they got a demolition order. And the most like scary.
Say that one more time. You just started and we lost you again, but please say it again. The most scary.
Yeah, the other policy that we have witnessed since May so far until today, which is the week before of the last week, which is like the most scary, and that would cost the lives and the bloody things against the humans that are living in those villages, is that the army like start to announce their schedules of training for the live ammunition and with their tanks and helicopters in the field that they see called firing zone 918, which means the villages that thousands of people living there, tens thousands of animals that they are grazing in those fields. Like now for me, walking among the fields that I see my neighbors and my family are grazing inside the fields where I grew up, I see them full of training targets, like targets that they are shooting with their firearms at it. So the sheep, like they cannot like graze inside there, and also they are training next to the people homes. Like if you, like the week before the last week, which marked the first week of a schedule of entire month for the army to train, we saw, like we witnessed and we stand with our neighbors in the village of El Merkez while the tanks are driving among the village. Like 2 tanks are driving among the village and go shoot next to the villages. The helicopters land and they fly over the schools of the children. And today there is like the other village that is called El Majaz. There is like a path that is next to the people homes, lead to the school of the children. They have put these targets and they were filmed with a video while they were shooting at them at the entrance of the school, right like 20 meters next to the people homes. So this is like actually like the whole policies that we have mentioned so far, which we are living through since May 4th. And it is the army, I mean, like the army is acting as they have the power. They can use the legal issues against us, and they can prevent us and confiscate our vehicles, and acting as if we are not there. Like what left after you distribute in the field where I graze my sheep your targets and you are shooting at them, you consider me as I don't exist. You will put your targets on my home and you don't care. So you will shoot at my home as if I don't exist. So this is like most scary thing, because when I mentioned today when I was detained in the village of El Merkez, I was visiting my friend who lost his right hand. Why he lost his right hand? Because next to his home in the village of El Merkez, less than 100 meters, there are the firing grounds that the army shoot at them. And sometimes the military fall from them, or maybe deliberately they leave some leftovers. So while he was running after his flock, he stepped on one leftover grenade that was not exploded. And while he was running, he stepped on it and it exploded in his body, breaking his right leg, and the shrapnels entered to his heart and the stomach, like right next to his heart, and he lost his right hand. So this is like what the people like, either they will let the people be killed by their leftovers or by cutting them from any people that will come to visit them, and to prevent any other people from reaching to them.
From reaching to the village.
This is like
We lost you just for one moment. Just after you talked about your friend who lost his hand, you were describing the unexploded ordnance, the leftovers from the army. We heard that, and I wanted to actually add that you've written about your friend, and there are photographs of him and of his life, and so. Okay, you're back. You were just telling us about your friend Muhammad. Maybe you want to.
Yeah, so I said like my friend Muhammad, like in the day that I was detained in El Merkez, it was because I was visiting him, and he was like, he lost his right hand. Now he lived like without his right hand because of the military leftover that train right next to his home. So Muhammad, like while he was running and grazing in his field, running behind his flock, he did not realize that while he was running, he stepped on a leftover grenade that was not exploded. And when he stepped on it, it was exploded, and he lost his right hand. So this is like all policies that I have just mentioned. It is like as if the military like acting as if we were not exist. Right. So that they feel like as if they are saying, we have the power over your villages from our high court, from their high court, and we will practice our freely training. Either you are there, or either you leave. But unfortunately, why it's scary, what I mentioned, it is the life here became impossible. Like either by cutting the people from their relatives and from the visit, or by people like are scared for their children. Yani there's leftovers and the army, like soldiers next to your home in front of their schools are shooting. This is something scary. Like, so the parents are so very worried for their children. So what I mean, the army is saying that either you stay or you leave, but with these policies, they will impact, like they will impose the evacuation against the people here without any attention, as they have did in the 1999, because they have made the life very scary and very terrorizing and impossible.
So given all of this, how are you able to continue your work as a journalist and an activist? How can you get to the villages and spend time with people?
With like,
Wait, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. Sorry for 1 second, just to clarify, your village of Tuba is in Masafer Yatta, but it is just outside of the firing zone.
It is inside the firing zone, but in the area that is the army stopped claiming to use for live ammunition. Why? Because there is an illegal outpost built over my village. So if the army will claim that my village will need it for the live ammunition, they have to do as well for the illegal outpost of Khavat Ma'on, which is an Israeli illegal outpost built on my village. So in order to keep the outpost stay there, they stop claiming that they need this area for the live ammunition. But
okay, thank you for that clarification, and sorry that I made that error. So Tuba is inside the firing zone, but not inside the area that's with the live ammunition. Okay, we are back, and Ali was just telling us about Tuba not being a part of where the military is training with live fire, but yes, being in the firing zone. So tell us about how are you able to move around now and to do the work that you want to do?
Actually, it's like in a very hard situation. Like now we are, it's not as before. Among like the villages where the army train, the army also, as I said, like sit like flying a checkpoint at the entrances of the villages, but also among the villages they have set up tents of groups of soldiers that they will stay and make shifts all the times over there. So every time that we have to go there, we have to stop at the checkpoint among the villages, and the army always threat us that you are not allowed to be here. Either I tell them like I'm from the village of Tuba, I'm from Masafer Yatta, I am just like 2 kilometers or a few kilometers away from here, and I live here where I supposed to go. They always like detain us, but what we have to do. Yani, sometimes like we walk and avoid like the military presence until we get in the villages in order to document the harassment against the other people. But at the end of the day, whenever we caught, like it depends on the mood of the soldiers to detain us or to release us. But they actually, even like as a journalist from Masafer Yatta or journalists outside, like Europeans or Americans, they were detained inside the villages, and always it depends on the mood of the soldiers to release them or to detain them. But if whatever, like they, as an activist, يعني, I believe that there are like the stories and people who are living there, and the army want, like it's their the goal of the army to keep these people isolated, and nobody listen to their stories and nobody give attention on their stories. But whatever the difficulties that I will face as activist and writer, and in order to document these harassment and war crimes that the Israeli army is doing, I will bear the difficulties in order to do it. If they detain me, if they arrest me, I will keep doing it. If I have to walk climbing the hills pass to avoid the tents, I will try as much as I can in order to reach to the people over there.
Wow, Ali, can you? I have a couple more questions for you if you have the time. Thank you for taking your time for us. And my first question is, you're so committed to spending time and telling the stories. What is the mood of the people of the firing zone specifically and of Masafer Yatta more broadly?
Actually, the people are devastated. Like I have described what they are going through in their daily lives. It's their first place and the life that they have to live in a 24 hours. Like as we said, like the solidarity groups that they come from outside, they might face the same, but for few hours, and they leave again. But what if you have to wake up and to when you eat, when you go to graze your sheep, when you walk among your villages, you would be harassed by the military. The people have like really the most of the people have like they are devastated and fed up from the military harassment and aggression in daily basis. But the people said like where I have to go, I have no other place to go. This is my home. I was born here, and my grandfather have owned this village and this land. I have no other place to go. Even as I keep saying and reminding the people, the eviction of Masafer Yatta is not just also a sense of homelessness. The people here have a unique life of making living. The people here are all shepherds and farmers who needs to stay next to their fields, which the army making it a firing fields. They needed to cultivate it in order to feed them and their livestock. So if they have to go from their homes and their home villages in Masafer Yatta, it doesn't just mean that they have to be homeless, but they have no other source to income. They are not doctors or teachers or engineers to maintain the life in the city. They just able to make income inside their villages. So they have no other choice. Like if people devastated and fed up, but they have no other choice. People are like every time that I go to write a story as a journalist, people like appreciate that I am making an interview to them because they say like we need someone to talk with, we need someone to listen to our story, we need someone to hear our stories. We are passing through a lot, like we are living here and kind of just breathing, but all our life elements is like the military is fighting against and depriving us from and making our life impossible. But we have no other choice. We have this is our home and this is our village and this is the way where we can make food for our children and shelter.
Thank you for sharing all of that. So my last question for you then is you're committed to telling these stories. You're committed to going and listening and creating a platform for telling these stories. And you're doing it as a journalist on 972 and sometimes in Haaretz and some other outlets. And you have also just launched a project together with 3 partners called Humans of Masafer Yatta. Will you tell us about Humans of Masafer Yatta? Like, why did you found it and what are you doing with it? What do you want it to be?
The founders of Masafer Yatta, me and the other 3 journalists and activists from Masafer Yatta, from the villages, we are in our early 20s. So since we were born, like our villages were classified as Area C under the Israeli military control. And also my village was also as well, since I was born, designated as a firing zone. So since I was born, me and the other guys in the Humans of Masafer Yatta project, we have been witnessing the demolition against ourselves and against our children and our neighbors. And every time, like we see it as a post in Facebook, for example, since Facebook existed, or as, but we said no, that home demolition is not just a breaking news. It is not just a post in Facebook or Instagram. The Israeli occupation forces have demolished 2 houses in Masafer Yatta. It's demolishing a feeling and the story of a child, of an old woman, of a father, a mother who has a feeling. What does it mean to lost his home? So we had the idea to, which is like Humans of Masafer Yatta.
So we're back after internet trouble for another moment. And Ali, you were just saying to us that a home demolition is not just breaking news, and it's not just a one-time event, but it's really the feeling of a child or of an elderly woman, or of it is about these communities, about these people, and about their lives. And so you and Hamdan and Basel and Auda created this new project, Humans of Masafer Yatta, and you were telling us what you want to do with it. Will you please continue?
Yeah, so yeah, like the home demolition that is for like the only shelter, as I said, for a mother, for a father, for a child, losing it and demolishing it is not just like a breaking news that, as I said before, to see it in a post is the occupation forces demolishing two homes in Masafer Yatta. We realized that in this project we have to bring the feeling and the impact of the home demolition on the residents and the humans that are living in those villages. So we started to interview people about like we interviewed the children, old women, and the mothers who lost their homes. And we are continuing to document like as a home demolition in Masafer Yatta, not to mention a home was demolished, but to mention a human's story that who lost his home and what does it impacted and how it impacted his entire or her entire life. So we are focusing in now in our current work on the villages of Masafer Yatta that are located in the firing zone, and yeah, hopefully like for all the people who are gonna listen to this to follow us and to hear the stories and what does it mean, and everyone can imagine it to be in the place of these people, like your bedroom or your bathroom or your living room, or even like as a child who was born and lived 10 years in a house. What does it mean to, after living 10 years and having all your childhood memories in your bedroom, to see it, the bulldozers destroying it and driving over it? And when you try to come and to protect your home, you cannot, because there are armed forces that would be surrounded the bulldozer that will prevent you from even standing non-violently in front of the bulldozer. And you will see as a child your father being beaten up or getting like an arm fracture or a leg fracture because he tried to keep a shelter for you. So this is like our idea, and to bring these feelings, like the psychologically of the people, the feeling and the emotions of the people, and not just that, but also the impact of the on the daily lives of the humans living in Masafer Yatta who already lost their homes or whose their homes are under threat of demolition at any moment.
Thank you so much, Ali, for sharing all of that with us, and thank you for the vision and the effort of sharing these stories and these experiences, and the faith you have in your audience that they want to hear these stories and they want to hear what people are going through and what this experience is like. And it's such a beautiful project, and I'm grateful to be able to amplify it here on this podcast, and also grateful that FMEP is able to support it a little bit through with some funding. And I just wish you more and more and more opportunities to share all of these observations and analysis and experience and feelings that you share so well and so clearly. And so thank you so much for spending your time with us tonight. I know it's quite late for you. So we will end here unless you have any last words you want to say to this international audience. I invite you to say them now if you do.
Yeah, I hope that what I have described was like enough to imagine what's the situation for the residents of Masafer Yatta. And believe me, like what I am as a resident passing through, it's totally, it's like exactly the policies, it means of how to deprive a human from living. not just a human, even the animal. Any living being in Masafer Yatta is affected because there are military coming over, civilians, people, and living beings that are making life in those villages. I hope, like, as an activist, I also have maybe seen extra things because I have to move to document and see other people's lives. What is people are like? I have maybe interviewed and sit and talked with the thousands of people who are living there here, and everyone have passed through so much and through a lot of either like losing actually like a family member or a home, or not being able to like practice their lives in these villages. I ask on everyone to support the people here and to help like putting pressure on Israel in order to stop these ethnic cleansing policies and evacuation policies against the Palestinians from their homes, because the military excuse is just a way that Israel is doing in the occupied West Bank in order to evacuate the Palestinians from these areas. 18% of the West Bank was declared as a military zone, and in everywhere they are evacuating the Palestinian villagers who existed right before the occupation of the 67. And whenever there is a settlement built inside the firing zone, the army stop the claim of using a live ammunition. So it's clearly an excuse to ethnically cleanize the Palestinians from these villages and replace them with Israeli settlers, as what is happening in Masafer Yatta. So I call in everyone that there are humans here who are really suffering and facing a lot, and uh, anyone would be proud and glad if he would share to prevent a war crime and a disaster against the human. So everyone from his spot can share and can in order to stop those war crimes. And you can follow us in our pages like Humans of Masafer Yatta, Youth of Sumud, my own page Ali Awad, and other people who are documenting lives from those areas, and also most importantly on the hashtag of Save Masafer Yatta. And thank you everyone.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you so much. Thank you for all of that. And thank you for the push at the end for people to share. And I will put links up to everything that we've talked about and what you just said, Humans of Masafer Yatta, Youth of Sumud, hashtag Save Masafer Yatta, and also your page so people can follow you. We did actually do an interview with Samiha Horaini about 2 weeks ago from Youth of Sumud, and I will put another link so that everybody can keep listening and keep tuning into Occupied Thoughts for more content like this. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Please come to our website, www.fmep.org, for all the links that I just talked about and more resources relating to Masafer Yatta and the firing zone, and to Ali's great work with his partners. And please make sure that you are subscribed to this podcast to stay up to date. You can find us on iTunes, on SoundCloud, or on Spotify. You can watch video versions of our podcasts, including this one, on YouTube. And I want to say thank you again, Ali, for sharing your time with us today. And with that, I am Sarah Anne Minkin, signing off until the next episode of FMEP's Occupied Thoughts.